Hello and welcome back to There Is a Floodlight That Never Goes Out podcast. As always, I'm joined by Will and Ed. How are we, guys?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks.
And today, we're not just wearing suits for any old reason. It is the inaugural Floodlight Awards. If we're going a little bit offish US, like it is a little bit like the Dundies, but with a little bit more prestige. But look, in today's episode of a two-parter, we're going to chat about the Premier League, our PFA Team of the Years, our PFA Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, and two awards that we've created ourselves, Most Improved Player for the League and an Unsung Hero. So kicking it off, lads, and I'll start with you, Will. Who is your man between the sticks?
Mine's very simple. No surprise here. I've gone with Edison, just because I think while he's had two obviously absolute brilliant centre halves in front of him, I think he's done his job, which is he might only have to make one save per game, but he makes it. I think his distribution is top level, and we have even seen that pick up an assist, and I think that's always impressive for a goalkeeper to get an assist. So no surprises, but I think he just does all the right things. It's what makes him one of the best keepers in the world. That's why I've gone with Edison.
Yeah, there's been a few faults about Edison this season in the Premier League. I think he's got the most clean sheets at the minute. What do you say to those people who say, his shot stopping's probably below average for a top level keeper?
I think it's one of those things, you're not going to be good at everything, and I think in a team like Man City, having an unbelievable shot stopper isn't the most important asset for a goalkeeper. You look at a Sam Johnston, who is a brilliant shot stopper, and he's getting, however many shots a game, whereas Edison, he won't have to make an unbelievable amount of stops, but his distribution always will have to be sort of at a top level, and that's what it is. So I think he's perfect for that Man City side.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Man City have got such a good defence. When they do concede a chance, it tends to be a high quality chance. So we've heard your goalkeeper, Will. Ed, who have you got as your number one?
First of all, Edison was obviously a very close second to my pick, but where's the fun in being normal? As many will know, I love Grant Hanley. It's a slightly alternative pick here, but one that I equally feel is justified, and that's Alfonso Ariola, Fulham keeper, 9 clean sheets this season. But for me, what he brings to that team, some of the saves he makes, he pulls off, really acrobatic, speculative saves, and he's won them and drawn them games single-handedly at times, and being a real sort of commander at the back. I went for Ariola for this one.
Yeah, in French that does mean nipple, but that wouldn't describe.
Yeah,
it does. That wouldn't describe his performances this season.
I can't believe you didn't know that.
I did not know that, genuinely.
Yeah, education. Ed, similar sort to the question that I asked Will, but in a different way. Alfonso Ariola's had to deal with a lot of shots this season just because of how poor Fulham's defence has been at times. Especially first half of the season before Joachim Andersen was brought in from Lyon. What would you say to someone who would say, he's only in your team this season because of the volume of shots that he has to deal with?
Of course, that's a valid argument, and the worse the defence, the more likely, higher numbers that the goalkeeper's going to have. But every time I've watched him, there's been no real clangers. I'm talking Alisson this season, he's dropped a couple of real clangers from a top level goalkeeper. Ariola doesn't seem to have that particularly in him when I've seen him. It's a good point about the distorting of the numbers, but this is it's understandable, and I don't think you can take that away from a goalkeeper and say, well, they're not a good goalkeeper, they're just made to look good because of how bad their defence is. Because you look at if you come using that argument, let's look at Aaron Ramsdale, who's got really good numbers, but in reality, we all know second half of the season he's picked up, but first half of the season, the guy was, fairly terrible, and many were questioning.
And that's being kind.
That's been very kind, especially from a Sheffield Wednesday fan. I could use a lot more expletive language there to describe his performances, but we'll keep it clean. and respectful. So I think that argument has its flaws.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair enough. In between my sticks is probably a more conventional pick. To that, I've gone for Emiliano Martinez of Aston Villa. I think most Premier League fans will say, outside of Ederson, Emi Martinez has probably been, maybe the best keeper in the league this season. I've got some stats here, which I will provide for pretty much every player. He's got 14 clean sheets, and he does have the best save percentage in the league. So for me, I definitely could have gone Ederson because the guy's so important to Manchester City, and I think Ariola's a decent shout. Maybe even someone like Eduard Mendy for how brilliant he's been for Chelsea. But
definitely.
for me, I went for the Argentine.
Yeah, I mean, Martinez has been excellent this season, and I feel like his career trajectory has been a little weird. I remember when he was on loan at us, he wasn't very good. Obviously at Reading a few seasons ago, and then got his chance at Arsenal and took it really well. And I don't know about you guys, and perhaps this is the cynic in me, I was sort of expecting the clangers to come and people to, and because you wouldn't have thought he could reach this top level, a few seasons ago. But all credit to him, and he's more than deserved his place. The choice to go to Villa rather than stay at Arsenal, people laughed when he said it was a step up in his career, but he's been proven to be true. And no, a very valid pick, that.
Yeah. I think you made a good point as well about the clangers, and I'm in agreement with you, Ed, that when he first went to Villa, I thought to myself, this absolutely stinks of or who was that guy who played for Arsenal years ago? Almunia, when he signed for Watford. I thought we were going to see part 2 of that. But he's been brilliant. I think it was on his debut against Sheffield United that sort of sent 2 teams in different trajectories, and he saved a penalty on that day that obviously wasn't scored from Sheffield United, and their season beautifully capitulated. The less said about that, probably the better if you're a Blade listening to this. We don't want to offend you too much. Actually, lads, one thing we have got to clear up is what formations did we go with?
Okay, well, I'll go first. Mine's just a simple 4-4-2.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit more continental in a 3-5-2 formation.
Yeah, similar to Ed. I've gone full-blown Antonio Conte / 2 St. Chris. I'm going with a 3-4-3. So now we've cleared that up, let's get on to our defence. Will, seeing as though you've got a flat back 4, do you want to talk us through your fullbacks?
So, my fullbacks. First of all, I've gone with James Justin. And now,
Right.
The left backs in the Premier League, I think there's arguably a much stronger pick of right backs than there is left backs. However, I think James Justin, at the start of the season, was, well, Pereira's injured. Who have we got? James Justin will do a job. And it soon became James Justin's one of the best players on the field for each week for Leicester. And he was so important for them, really, really good. And, such a shame that he got a bad injury because, well, this is an open question. Would it have been an outrageous call to suggest him for the Euros?
Over Luke Shaw, yeah.
Well, yeah, that is true. Luke Shaw has obviously had a very, very good season. But I did just sort of go for I think he deserves a bit of... I think with picking up an injury at the end of the season, you can almost often get forgetting about, work you do at the very start of the season can be forgotten. James Justin was in there for me. Now this right back, I can guarantee this is going to get some stick from you lads. But I've gone for Vladimir Coufal from West Ham. I can see the faces already. But for me, it's more what you've got for they're bought him for £5 million, and it would be ridiculous to say that he's not worth 10 million plus. I would say, because
100%.
I think he's one of these players they've brought in, and he's just worked in that West Ham system, like we've seen with Thomas Souček. These continental players, not really heard that much of them, and they've come in, they've been brilliant. He's picked up 6 assists, which is so important from a modern fullback. Is also what they do in the attack, and I just really like him. I like his attitude. I like his style of play, proper up and down the wing. And yeah, I think West Ham have found themselves a very, very good fullback there. And I've been impressed by him all season. So that's why I've gone with Vladimir Coufal. Because, that West Ham defence, there's been no sort of outrageous big names in it. And yet it's been so effective all season. And so, yeah, that's why I've put him in.
Yeah, my objection actually comes to James Justin more than Coufal. I think he makes a really strong claim to be in that right back role.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously me and Tom both got back three, so I'm assuming. Have you got anyone playing in your sort of wing back position who's a full back?
I've got a full back in the three.
Yes, because
like Will said, I couldn't really. Like Will said, there's sort of a lack of good left backs. I thought there's better midfields and attackers than there is defenders this year, so that's why I cut mine to a 3. But go on, Ed, sorry.
Yeah, so obviously I'm probably going to give away one of your players, I'm assuming now, Tom. Luke Shaw, how you can overlook him at left back with James Justin is a little bit dodgy in my eyes. I think if Justin had a sustained season of quality, then yeah, sure. But the injury for me, I don't know. You make a very good point there about how you can have an incredible start to the season, but an injury can then make everyone forget about that.
I suppose with my two players, it's two players who, at the start of the season, you weren't expecting to be anywhere near this sort of conversation. And I guess that's how I've justified it in, Luke Shaw, while, okay, this season he's excelled massively, he was still a very good left-back in the first place. These two lads, they're new onto the scene, and I think they've put a very good name out for themselves.
Yeah, that's fair enough. This is going to be, I can feel it already, I think this is going to be a big debate, this podcast, every single position, but my only objection to that will be that it is just the team of the year. It's no prerequisites, no sort of storylines to it. It's who's been the best players in each position this season, and I just think Luke Shaw, you're going to laugh at me, lads, I think he's the best left-back in the world on form. I don't think who's better.
Equally, someone saying Alfonso Davies when they don't watch him and realise he's had a very average
Instagram football fans are a cancer.
Genuinely, someone can say that.
I'm just trying to go through left backs. It's probably not an outrageous call.
I think there's only one fullback in Europe who can really say, well, I'm maybe on par with him, and even then, I still don't think he is, and that's Andrew Robertson, but he's not been good this season.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it's Luke Shaw, and yeah. Before we get on to centre backs, I'll sort of pick my outside fullback who's in the back three, just so it clears it up. And yeah, it's LS23. He's been nicknamed Shawberto Carlos for a bloody good reason. 5 assists, 1 goal this season, but he's created 7 big chances. And his chances created numbers are up there with the very best in the league. And for a left back, I just think it's outstanding. And when you consider the fact that last season, I think it was something ridiculous, like he only completed in single figures overlapping runs, past the winger last season. This season, he's just looked unbelievable. And we're going to get onto him later in the pod because of who I've got as my manager of the year. But I think there's one man who deserves a lot of credit for that, and I will leave his name sort of in the shadows until we get onto that point. But yeah, Luke Shaw, what a player, and we'll talk about this as well in a different podcast. He's probably my starting left back for England at the Euros because I don't see anyone better than him. Take a breather there. I love Luke Shaw. Vic Grant Hanley-esque. Moving on to your centre backs then, Ed. 3 centre backs, seeing as though you have gone for a back 3. Who have you got in them starting berths?
Well, it's going to go to the northwest, to Manchester. Harry Maguire, Ruben Diaz, John Stones. I'll start with Maguire. Is he a blade? Is he an owl? No one really knows. He was
brought in our academy until we went into admin.
Well, he was an owl youth supporter, and then obviously a blade. So only he knows that one. All I know, it's from Mosborough or Johnfield or somewhere, which, without offending the people of those places, it's like, it's proper outskirts of Sheffield, and pick either one basically. for Maguire himself, though, after that weird tangent, I think I'm going to say this, and you can laugh at me, you can raise your eyebrows. He's the most underrated player in the league.
No, I agree fully. Yeah,
because
I agree.
It's this point about he didn't choose the £80 million price tag. You got to remember that. You know, 13 clean sheets this season, 2 goals. Coming forward, he's one of the best in the business with ball at feet, centre back wise. A real rock there. And Man United have their issues with their centre back partnership. Lindelof aerially isn't great. Bailly has his injury problems, but he's ever present and been instrumental to this successful season that Man United have had. As for Reuben Diaz, what a signing! The Van Dijk of City. And I know that analogy is used a lot, but it really is true, because when you thought of Pep's sides before, you'd always say the defence was the weakest aspect of the game, but he's really changed that. And they start as he means to go on from the back. 14 clean sheets this season, 85 passes a game. He really fits into that Pep sort of style and how he wants to play. Only young, so only going to get better and better. And from Benfica, what a signing. And then I'll just round it off with John Stones, Barnsley's finest, Henderson's finest. 20 appearances this season, so not a load, but 13 clean sheets in that time. Only 9 goals conceded when he's on the pitch. 4 goals himself. We know he can score goals. He got 2 in the World Cup. I mean, the thing with John Stones is everyone's always said it, is that on the ball he's unreal, but he really does have that clanger in him. And we have seen the odd time this season that clanger come out and show its face, but not as often as it used to be. I think the classic example of a sort of modern day centre back. And had you sat me down in September and said you'd be putting John Stones in your team this season, I'd laughed you off. Yeah. Because he looked not to really have a future at City anymore. But no, all credit to him, and 2 South Yorkshire boys in there, so doing the area proud, aren't they? And yeah,
certainly are.
That's my back 3.
Yeah, I would just touch on the Diaz. Well, I may as well say mine. I've got Diaz and Stones as my back 2.
Yeah.
Again, Ed covered the reasons why. But I think with Diaz, I completely get what you were saying, Ed, in that he was to City what Van Dijk was to Liverpool. He filled that gap, the thing they were missing. But I don't agree with people who try and compare them two directly, because
it's not an attribute sort of comparison.
It's
more just what
they brought. I completely agree with you. But I do think in terms of the 2 players, they're so different. While both being a centre half, so you can't be that different. They are different. You've got Van Dijk on the ball, unbelievable. He's ball playing, etc. Then you've got Diaz, who would stand in front of a bus. So you've got.
It's that Peter Crouch analogy: buffaloes and gazelles.
Yeah.
Van Dijk's a gazelle. Reuben Diaz is a buffalo, and I think you can say the same of the Stones and Diaz partnership. That Stones is definitely the gazelle, and Diaz is the buffalo, because, like Ed said, John Stones on the ball's a joke.
Yeah. I mean, imagine Van Dijk and Diaz together. Like, could you even score a goal?
I don't want to, mate. I don't want to. I hate City and I hate Liverpool. I don't want to imagine that sort of fusion of 2 unbelievable footballers.
And I would say, just to critique your pick on Maguire, Ed, I absolutely agree that he's very underrated. People attach him to that £80 million price tag too much, which, like I say, was out of his hands. But I do still think start the season, the reason that sort of stopped him being Diaz, Stones level, those first few games of the season, that United defence were just all over the place. And I'm not directly saying it was his fault, but I think that's perhaps what holds him back a little bit.
No, you make a good point. Like the Spurs game
exactly.
At home, he was shocking. But he's been a grower, you know what I mean? As the season's gone on, he's got stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And going into the Euros with real sort. I mean, he got injured today, didn't he? Well, at the time of recording, Sunday. Coming off, I think on the bus with not a pop, but a sort of supportive shoe on. So hopefully he's okay. But if he is fit for the Euros, he's going in the perfect sort of form.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, obviously, I've got to mention it to fill out the 11, but I've got Diaz and Stones as well. Because how can you not? They've just been one of the best centre-back pairings the league's ever seen. And I know people love to, I think it's revisionism. People love to say, oh, you can't compare them to Fernand and Vidic. You can't compare them to Tony Adams and Martin Keown. Listen, in 10 years' time, we'll talk about Ruben Diaz and John Stones as sort of in that bracket. And same probably with Van Dijk and Matip or Gomez, whoever played with him last season in large parts. It's just because we're seeing it right now happen in front of us. And yeah, Ruben Diaz and John Stones, for me, one of the best ever, and obviously the best this season. And Ed, I'm going to talk about him as my unsung hero, but Harry Maguire is a cracking shout for the team this season. Manchester United, he's not only a captain, he's Mr. Consistent for them. Until today, he'd played every minute of 72 Premiership matches in a row. And that is some going. And it's not just that he turns up in these games, he's consistently a 7 out of 10, apart from that Spurs game where he maybe had a 4. But yeah, a brilliant defender.
Well, who would you say are some sort of players who aren't in? Because obviously Diaz and Stones have been that strong. Do you think there's anyone who have perhaps been, how would you say, look past, not because they haven't had a good season, but yeah, Konsa. Yeah, I think Konsa this season especially has become the more dominating centre back between him and Tyrone Mings. And I was
unless you go with Southgate.
Yeah, well that's it. I was disappointed not to see him in that team for the international friendlies, because I think he's, if Tyrone Mings gets a shout, I think he definitely does.
I saw a good tweet today. Like that thing that says how on earth did this get there? Tyrone Mings in the England team. How did it happen? I know I had him in my squad.
That's my only possible plausible explanation is that he's got left foot. I think also had Michael Keane into that list of solid centre backs who've been overlooked. I really like Michael Keane. Tom doesn't look so sure on that one.
Listen, he's a decent centre half, isn't he, Michael Keane? But the best in the league, top 5 in the league, not for me. A lot of talk this season about Wesley Fofana. I'm sorry, lads, but if he were called Wes Fife and were from Glasgow, he won't get these shouts. I don't think Fofana's that good. Seriously, I think he's a decent Premier League centre half. He's on the same level as his centre back partner in Johnny Evans, in the sense that he's a good, decent centre half in the Premier League. But he's getting like Koundé and Varane shouts. He's just not at that level, or at least not yet. And I think this year, just because he's had his first year in the Prem, people are hyping him up too much.
I think with that one, age is a massive factor, but you can't get away from it. Whenever I watch him, and you think, how young he is, and how composed he is, and how good he is, you really do think he can go right to the very top. And
I'm not arguing that he will probably get to the upper echelons of the game, but he's not there yet.
High level now, you know what I mean? He's a consistent top 6 player right now. You know what I mean? Not classical top 6, obviously, but realistic top 6. Yeah, I think he's well in high regards for good reason. But should we move on to midfields then?
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed.
So, if you've got a 4-4-2, I've got a 3-5-2. What have you got, Tom, again?
I've got a 3-4-3.
Right. Should we start with our conventional sort of left and right midfielders? I'll get things underway. Start on the left-hand side. Now, this is a man who I said to certain people at the start of the season, as will be able to justify, was better than Mane, and I got quite a lot of stick for it, should I state. I stand by this statement. And that is, of course, Heung-min Son. For me, the best finisher in the league. 17 goals, 10 assists this season, with an expected goals of 9, so he's overachieving. Ambidextrous with his feet, left and right foot. There's nothing he really can't do. And in a team, Spurs have been a team stifled, I felt, this season, restricted. He's still managed to find a way to flourish. His partnership with Kane is one of the best we'll ever see in the Premier League. And if you haven't put Heung-min Son in your team this season, I'm seriously questioning you. As for the right-hand side, I feel like this guy's had a bit still of underrated season. He hasn't got mentioned nowhere nearly enough, partly because of the failures of his team, and that's Mo Salah. He's still banged them in, 20 goals this season, 4 assists, and this has just now been expected from the player, which I think is a testament of his own quality. Is that you've seen those numbers thinking, yeah, it's been an okay season, when really she's been, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? And I think he's been overlooked this season because of the failings of Liverpool as a squad and their aspirations. But no, Son and Salah on either wing. What have you got?
Go on, Tom.
Sorry, I'll get going with this. On the right side of my midfield, I mean, I'm not, just to clear it up, this isn't going to be a coherent team, so bear with me in players and positions. But on the right side of my midfield four, I'm in agreement with you, Ed. I've got Mohamed Salah. Like you said, just because Liverpool haven't been at their best this season doesn't mean Salah hasn't. And that sort of spell between, was it like January and like March, when they just couldn't buy a win at home, away from Anfield, he carried them in games. And yeah, 20 goals and 4 assists. Okay, maybe he's not hit the heights of previous seasons, but it's still a remarkable season in the Premier League. And yeah, a brilliant player who, it kills me to say how good he is every time, because I'm not the biggest fan of Liverpool. And on the left side of my midfield four, I might get a bit of stick for this one. I might not. I mean, probably only because he's only played 22 games of the season, but that is Jack Grealish. Them 22 games it was genuinely some of the best football I've ever seen from a player in the Premier League. And to do it for Aston Villa, the guy's a joke. And I might have questioned his height previous in his career, like when he was in the Championship, that first year in the Championship, he was dead. He was a dead baller. He was just so poor. And last season, I thought he might have got overhyped at points. But this year he's been unbelievable. And I think I've got some of the stats here for him. 6 goals, 10 assists in 22 games. That's mental. 14 big chances created in 22 matches. Now, let's put it out there. The guy's got Ollie Watkins in front of him. Now, Ollie Watkins is a decent striker, yeah. If you put Cavani in that Villa side, Jack Grealish has got 20 assists. He's unbelievable, and I think he's kept Dean Smith in a job. We talk about Dean Smith and Grealish as this like bromance, despite the fact it's player and manager. Jack Grealish, he kept Villa up last season. Let's give him credit. He kept them up with his goals and assists last year, and he got them into contention for Europe with his goals and assists this year. Nowadays, when I watch Villa without Grealish, I think they're all right championship team. They're all right Premiership team, and they're probably sort of in that 13th to 16th range. But when Grealish is playing for them, I think they could challenge for Champions League. And look at West Ham this season. They've gone to the next level with Lingard, and if you give Grealish 38 games, I think Villa will be up there. But listen, there's no way that you can discredit Grealish, and I've probably jabbered on for far too long here about a man who's only played 22 matches, but he's unbelievable.
No, definitely. I think another sort of James Justin-esque issue there is he just not played the full season, and so
yeah,
But I think you talked there about Villa, and nowadays they're a squad who they don't excite me anymore to watch when he's not playing. I know Anwar El Ghazi had a good little spell when he was first sort of injured, Grealish. But now I'm a big paid up member of the Grealish fan club. I really like him. I think he should be starting for England. I mean, that's a different conversation. But no, I think more than valid pick. For me, like I said, Son on that left hand side. it's hard to justify not picking him. But if it wasn't him, it would definitely been Grealish. But I mean, Will, who have you gone for on your two wingers?
I've matched you, Ed, and I've gone Salah on the right, Son on the left. And for me, that's just because Son's numbers this season have been unbelievable. And I wouldn't go as far as you saying he's better than Mane, because I think both on their best day, I would still prefer to have Mane in my team. But I can absolutely appreciate that Son's numbers this year have been unbelievable, and hence why he's in the team and Mane isn't. On the Grealish point, agreed. He maybe hasn't had enough game time this year for me to put him in the team, but I put James Justin in, so I can't really talk. But no, I think with Grealish, it's just. I mean, what do you boys think? I've always been a person who thinks Grealish. Don't get me wrong, I'm a massive fan of him. Think he's great, but I don't think he should move away from Aston Villa, because I think he works as that main man in the team. And I just think that I don't know. I just think that's what he suits.
I'll let you start, Ed, on this.
I think he can walk into pretty much any single side in the league and still be that dominant man. He's so good. What he brings to the team in terms of on the pitch, just a rattiness. You know, one of the most fouled players for a reason. Classic player. You love him if he's for your team, hate him if he's not on your team. I think he's easily a top 6 player, top 4 player in my opinion. And yeah.
But which one of those top 4 clubs would you put him in? Because I don't think he'd suit Liverpool.
I'd put him Manchester United. I think he'd work perfectly. Not sure about Chelsea under Tuchel, whether he suits that system really. City, give me Jack Grealish over Raheem Sterling every single day of the week. I mean, Sterling now looks to be on the bench.
I was going to say, I don't think Sterling's really in that team anymore, is it?
No, because of Foden and also Maguire has been excellent this season. But I think Grealish will make a strong claim to be a real regular in that City side. Yeah. And then, obviously, you can walk into Spurs and Arsenal, the other two big six.
Why do we talk about Arsenal's big six anymore?
No, I mean, at time of recording this, there's Arsenal West Brom on tonight. That I don't think that could be a worse fixture, like, if they tried, because Arsenal, like, the fact that Arsenal are going into that game, and yet I still think West Brom could do a job on them, sums up their season, doesn't it? But yeah, that's a different conversation.
The final club obviously is Liverpool as well, isn't it? I mean, could against the Liverpool side have had this debate with the Liverpool fan many a time.
What, Grealish are we talking about?
Yeah, Grealish. I think you'd have to change position. He can't oust Mane on the
well,
left-hand side.
He can't be an out-and-out winger, can he? Because that's not what he is. He's not a quick, take it past the fullback. He's a, sort of a mix between... To be fair, and this seems a bit crazy, but City, under this system of not playing a striker, having a false 9 with a front 3 who switch around, might not be the worst place for him.
This is like my Woodrow midfield shout last year. I remember saying to Will last year, I went, play Coley Woodrow midfield. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw it, I was like, well, I don't like this. But yeah, I agree with Will that if you put Grealish in the City side, I think he'd do bits. And I agree with you, Ed. If you put Grealish in the United team, he does bits. But because he's not that type of winger that's aggressive, he does run at fullbacks, but he doesn't run directly at the fullback. He tends to take them on at either side. I'm not sure how that works when you've got Rashford and Luke Shaw, who have such a good connection down the left, and then you've got Bruno Fernandez, who just does ridiculous numbers week in, week out. But seeing as though we are talking about our midfielders now, let's get on to our central midfielders. I mean, you've got a midfield too, Will. So do you want to talk us through them picks?
Yeah, I mean, I will just state that I am playing a 4-4-2, which means I've gone for 2 midfielders who I would say are more box-to-box as opposed to a Bruno Fernandez, who is solely an attacking midfielder. And so for that reason, I've gone with Mason Mount and Fabinho. Now, I can... Look, the Fabinho call already is... This man...
For the purpose of recording, my eyebrows are being raised.
This man, was moved into centre-back, and Liverpool defensively this season haven't been bad. The
Yeah.
problem has been scoring goals. So he's a midfielder, shoved in the back. Without him, they look terrible. He organised that back four. Since then, since they've brought in Ozan Kabak, Phillips, etc., he's proved himself. Been back into the midfield, and I think in that defensive midfield role, he's one of the best in the world.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. He's one of the
100%,
best in the world. But this season, just with him being a centre half for such predominant lengths of the season, I struggle to pick him. And to be fair, it wasn't a shout where I'm going, what on earth are you thinking? I think for me, Liverpool this season, you go Salah, Fabinho, because he's been that little sort of level behind Mo Salah this season, but he's definitely been, one of Liverpool's standout performances. But I just think the midfields this season in the Premier League, like the likes of Fernandez, Gundogan, and a bit of an outside pick who I've got in my midfield who I won't say of yet. I just think they've been so good this year, and I can't justify Fabinho. You picked Mason Mount, Will.
Yeah.
What qualities do you think he's shown this season that maybe he didn't show last season?
I think mainly he's defensive. The man has become. I think originally he was definitely a sort of attacking midfielder, centre forward player, and now I would happily play him at number 8, box to box.
I think he could do a job at 6.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think Mason Mount, I'm not saying I've been a huge fan of him, but I've never thought he wasn't, a lot of people said he was overhyped, etc. And this season, if you're still coming out this season thinking he's overrated, then seriously you need to have a look at yourself, because I think he's completely proved everyone wrong, and especially under Thomas Tuchel now, he's really striving. And when Tuchel first came in, he was on the bench, wasn't he? And everyone was a bit like,
Yeah.
But no, I think he's found his proper position, and I think he's one of England's, especially one of their big future talents. And I would put him in a similar conversation to a Phil Foden or someone. Slightly different position, but talent-wise, I think he's got it.
Yeah, definitely. Ed, I want to bring you in on the Mason Mount conversation. When Frank Lampard was the Chelsea gaffer, it was often sort of banded around Twitter that he was a bit of a teacher's pet. Do you think with Thomas Tuchel coming in and preferring Mount as one of his favoured players, it just shows that he's not teacher's pet, but rather is a manager's dream, and he's one of the best, if not the best, English sort of central midfielder around?
I think you've highlighted there an issue with how we view players is why in the first place is being a teacher's pet something to be negative? Is it because we have this image of every time there's going to be a young English talent, they've got to have this sort of bad boy attitude to go along with it. They've got to have the mistakes. They've got to have the retribution, all that sort of thing.
The arc, the sort of character arc.
Yeah. And you look at other talents such as Foden and Greenwood, and they've obviously had that problem. But with Mount, he genuinely is just studious and great at what he does. And I've got him in my team. I think he has to start as an 8 for England. And that's what's also really impressed me this season, how he has dropped a little deeper, positionally speaking, and been just as successful, if not better. I think I was one of those people at the start of the season and in seasons gone by, well, last season, thinking, is he a little bit overhyped? Is he all that? But no, he's shown this season on the big stage as well. In the big games, he can do it, and he can do it, provide it for Chelsea. He needs to work on his faking to hold the camera, though, because I don't know if you saw that, but that recent tweet Chelsea put out where he had his hand like that, but you could just tell he wasn't holding the camera. But no, and I think a great example of another product to come out of the Chelsea academy, and more than deserves a place in my team this season and in Will's. I'll go on to my other 2 picks actually whilst I'm here.
Yeah.
The very basic, there's no sort of curveballs being thrown here, but it's Bruno Fernandez and Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne obviously had injuries this season, but he's still shown just how good he is. 17 big chances created, 3.5 per 90 minutes, 16 goals and assists. He's brilliant. He's different to most attacking midfielders in the world in terms of his strength and drive, when he gets the ball. Bruno Fernandez, we'll come on to it later, but he's going to get another award from me. Not that it'll mean anything to him, but 16 goals, 11 assists, 19 big chances created. I mean, I do have a slight problem with just listing out stats all the time, because I think some people do it, and stats don't always correlate to an actual performance.
Stats help form an opinion, but stats aren't the opinion. If you literally just look at a stat sheet and go, well, that makes him a good player or that makes him a bad player, it takes away the most human form of football is had to make you feel. The eye test is something which I love, because it's finally coming into sort of the public eye where people are saying, yeah, okay, he's got these brilliant stats, but he doesn't pass the eye test. Or he doesn't have great stats, but he does pass the eye test. And yeah, football is a game that's played, not on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Neil Warnock quote, isn't it? The recruitment team gave him, hundreds of names. That this is the best defender in Europe that we can afford, sort of thing. And he had a 5-second look at him, said that lad can't defend. You know what I mean? It's like that, isn't it?
Which is a bit dinosaur maybe, because look at the Super Reds, but hey.
Yeah, and look at Brentford and all those that have adopted that model.
Just while we're talking about, sorry to interrupt, Ted. Very random, but Barnsley or Wednesday can have either Bruno or De Bruyne. Who are you taking?
I'm taking De Bruyne.
Okay.
Simply because they both got ball at feet, similar unreal amounts of talent.
Yeah.
But De Bruyne's build is something you can't manufacture, and the way he drives the ball, his athleticism, strength. I also think Bruno, I'm not going to say an attitude problem, but he's quite Mardy. He's a Mardy player, which isn't a bad thing at all, because you want those players to be driven by wins. But is he a De Bruyne who's going to put his head down and start working to change a team, or is he a player who's a bit of a, see with Haaland a little bit, you see him sort of shake his head and just huff and puff when things aren't going his way. It's not a bad quality, but in a team, if he was going to a Wednesday team where, let's face it, that he's not going to be getting his own way every single time, he's going to need to start actually looking to get the ball and creating stuff for himself a little bit more. So I'd go De Bruyne on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I disagree there. I love Bruno. I love him. He's just a brilliant player. And you know what? I sort of like that little bit of a bastard in him. And I think if you put Bruno Fernandez in the Barnsley team, him and Alex Smoot would form a formidable partnership. But yeah, I like that he's a bit of a, Eddie says he's Mardy. I like that about him, because it just shows that he's a winner, and he doesn't like losing. And even something as basic as I saw today in the Villa game, that I think a drop ball wasn't given to United. He was at the ref for a solid minute about it. I like that in a player. I prefer that to someone who's more passive. But yeah, it's got to be said that Kevin De Bruyne, like Ed says, is everything about him, even down to the way that he's built, physically, he's just perfect as a player. But it's styles. They say styles make fights in boxing, and I think if I was a Wednesday, I probably would have De Bruyne in my League One team. But I'd have Bruno in the Barnsley team.
Oh dear, you had to, didn't you? You couldn't resist. No, I'd be in agreement with Ed, actually. I would go for Kevin De Bruyne. Both made very good points, fighting both of them's corner. But yeah, I like that drive. I like that kind of attitude. I'm less of a bastard, we could say, Tom. Tommy, you must be the biggest bastard here. Going off that. No, I get what you mean. It's important to want to win, because the aim of the game at the end of the day. But I do also like that, sort of, he will pick the team up on his own. He won't, if it's not going his way, he won't be annoyed. He'll try to do something about it to change it. But anyway, we went off tangent a bit there. But anyway.
I was going to say, let's hypothetical talk. So we've had your midfield too, Will. We've had, who've we had from you, Ed? We've had Mason Mount, KDB, and Bruno Fernandez. I'll get on to them two later, but my midfield two is Ilkay Gundogan and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Now, starting off with Gundogan, I don't necessarily think he's the most pleasing player to watch on the eye, and his numbers aren't the best either. So it sort of disregards everything that I've said for the past 5 minutes. But he gets crucial goals, and in that vital January to March period in a season, he got a lot of winners for Manchester City, and he's one of the key reasons why they managed to get to the top of the league and stay there, because in a game where they were struggling for a goal, Ilkay Gundogan would always make one of them darting runs into the box and get on the end of a cross and stick it in the back of the net. And he's probably had the best season of his career, not just scoring wise, but just coming in clutch. And Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, if we were having an award for best signing, I'd give it to him. And I know he's been sacked by Spurs, but I think he was an unbelievable signing. £12 million, I think, Tottenham paid for him. He's up there with the best defensive midfielders in the league. And these days, look at how much Manchester City paid for Rodri, 60 million. Look at how much Leicester are demanding for Ndidi, 70 million. And for 12 million, you're getting a player who this season has made 272 recoveries in the midfield, won 198 aerial duels, made 45 interceptions. And in a somewhat poor season for Spurs, in a season where Harry Kane and Heung-min Son have often dominated the headlines, I think Højbjerg's massively underrated. Ed, I saw your eyebrows twitching a little bit at my comments. What would you say on Højbjerg?
First of all, value for money, you cannot disagree with what you just said there, 100%. I have a theory that it came fashionable to jump on the Højbjerg bandwagon a little bit this season.
Maybe.
No doubt his defensive ability, and this isn't necessarily his role, but if you're talking the best in the world defensive midfielders, they have a bit more going forward than what Højbjerg has. I'm not gonna bring in a Wednesday, but I will bring in a Wednesday reference. But it's Joey Pelopessi-esque. It's what do you want from a player? And if you're the best in the world, you can't be satisfied with just the defensive abilities. Now, as you said, value for money, you can't slate it. But I just think it came a little bit too fashionable. Everyone, all football Twitter was like, Højbjerg's the GOAT, he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT. And when you get told that so many times, you inevitably start believing it. I'd like to see next season, if he can just push on a little further, 100% can be in the conversation.
Yeah.
But he's just not at that elite level for me yet.
I wouldn't say I've got Stockholm syndrome and that my captor's a football Twitter and that I'm only picking him for them reasons. But I've got to confess it. I've watched a lot of James Lawrence Alcott videos, and the guy loves Højbjerg. And yeah, there's been a lot of good midfielders in the league this season, but maybe similar to Will's sort of, I think, Kufal pick. No, it's not Kufal, sorry, Fabinho pick. Maybe in a lot of people's view, he hasn't been the best. But in terms of a PFA team of the year, I don't think there's been many better. And for someone who does his job, gets on with it, and passes the ball to, let's face it, better players once he's won the ball back, I don't think there's anyone better at that in the league. But I enjoyed that little debate about our midfields. So let's get on to probably the most controversial parts of our teams now, or maybe not controversial. We'll see who we've picked. I'm going to sort of break this down just due to the nature of these teams. We'll go one player at a time with the front three. So boys, who have you got as your first striker, Will, and who have you got as your central striker, Ed?
So I still can't believe I'm saying this, but Patrick Bamford is playing up front in my formation, and I think any football fan, if you just said at the start of the season Patrick Bamford was going to be one of the best strikers of the season, you would be like, no, just no. I watched him, well, as much as I could. I watched any of Leeds games when they played in the Championship, and while I think he often got a little bit too much abuse for, I thought he was all right, decent Championship striker. not many players make that jump from a decent Championship striker to one of the top Premier League strikers in a season. And it's a very weird thing with Bamford, because you send him to Liverpool and I think he would genuinely be terrible. He works in that Leeds system. Like, he's, I think we've spoken about it before, he's the definition of a system player. He plays unbelievably well under that Leeds system. He'll run until his legs can't run anymore on that press. And, he has got important goals for them. He still hasn't been clinical. He could have probably had a lot more. But he's got a lot of goals in a Leeds team that, it pains me to say has been impressive this season. And so, I don't think, in terms of out-and-out strikers, apart from the one I'll come on to later, there hasn't been that many stand out this year in the Premier League, unless I've missed someone blaringly obvious.
Yeah. Ed, who have you got as your first striker?
I think me and Will are in complete agreement, because I think we can all assume who his second pick is. So I've gone for Patrick Bamford as well. As you said, you tell me this is the start of the season, I don't think you're going to take some strong stuff, let's put it that way. But, let's not forget last season when they signed Jean-Kevin Augustin. That was because Leeds fans were mercilessly ripping apart Bamford.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was a laughing stock. Every single game, Bamford would be trending because of some sitter he'd missed.
The sitter, yeah.
And let's not get away from the fact he did miss those sitters, but the abuse was,
pretty horrible.
Heights.
Yeah.
But no, as Will said, there's not much really to add here, because Will's hit the nail on the head there. He's a perfect Bielsa player, really fits that system, one of the best in the world for pressing. I really do believe that. He hasn't been necessarily more clinical at times this season. I think what you've got with Leeds in Premier League this season is that they've been able to exploit defences almost more than in the Championship, because in the Championships teams sat back, played the low block against them, and tried to defeat them that sort of way. Whereas in the Premier League, where they're not one of the best sides in the league, teams perhaps go more expansively and leave themselves to be exploited, as we've seen time and time again. Leeds are one of the best in the league for doing that. And I think any striker you put in that situation would have got goals, but it's, testament to Bamford for the amount he's got. And the 7 assists as well isn't too shabby. And leaving that Leeds line alone, you need someone who's got unreal stamina, and he's certainly got that.
Yeah, definitely. To mention the obvious then, because I have got central striker with 2 forwards next to it. The obvious is Mr. Harold Kane, the Hurricane. He just got caned. He's been brilliant this season, hasn't he? And yeah, a strong shout for Player of the Year. 21 goals, 13 assists, and people might go, well, he's on penalties and things like that. I don't care. I mean, 0.66 goals per game, and he's remained fit pretty much all season as well. He's been unbelievable, and without him and Son, but probably him more so, Spurs will be in a similar position to Arsenal right now. And Jose Mourinho, once again, I'm going to have to mention him, even though he did get sacked, he stuck to his word. He made Kane explode. And I'm really looking forward to seeing England at the Euros. Maybe not tactically, because I know Southgate will probably get it wrong, but with Harry Kane in your team, you can't go wrong. And he's been sensational for Tottenham this season. There's not much more to say apart from that. I mean, you boys have both got him in your sides. What do you want to say about him, Will?
He's just he is in there in the best striker in the world at the moment, and that's not a ridiculous claim. He's just, that Son Kane partnership we saw build, particularly towards the beginning of the season, was so impressive. And I think this season we maybe saw a different side to Harry Kane, which wasn't out and out striker. He was pulling back a bit, and I'm not sure how many assists he's on now, but I know it's a very good amount for a striker. And to have a
13,
play like that, 13, yeah, well there you go.
Yeah.
It's very, very impressive. And like you say, put him in the England team, you've got a player who can score goals and set up goals, he's the complete striker, isn't he? So yeah, I'm very, very happy to see Harry Kane developing into such a brilliant player.
Yeah. Ed?
Best striker in the world for me. And I think this season he's eclipsed Lewandowski. Just because of the other side he's brought to his game in the assists, the sort of player that you're thinking when coming to the end of his career, he'll slowly move further and further back and will end up as maybe a centre mid. Rooney-esque in terms of that sort of career progression. I think he's unreal. Stick him in that City side, and you've got a 5-year period of at least 5-year at least domination period. And I'm not just talking in England, I'm talking in Europe. It would genuinely be a crime against humanity to see that. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. That's complete just hypothetical nonsense. But I think when you talk about players' value to a club they play for, you talk about your Grealishes, your Zahas, Kane is the one for me. That you take him out of that Spurs side, they have no identity. They have nothing apart from Son. They have Lucas Moura or Vinicius this season. You know what I mean? They are so dependent on that man. It's ridiculous. I think one of the greatest strikers of all time, and you've got to put him in there.
100%. Well, you boys have rifled through your picks, which means I've still got 2 forwards to go for. Like I said, because my team's not coherent, I don't expect them to be getting out on the pitch anytime soon. I've got De Bruyne in left wing position and Bruno Fernandez in the right wing position. I just had to find a way to get them in the team, and that was the way I saw fit to do so. Like you boys said, we've mentioned everything there probably is to say about KDB and Bruno, but I just would like to add one thing on Bruno Fernandez. He's United's cancer now. I think it's been said many times in the media, maybe lazily by some pundits, that he is United's best signing since Cantona, United's most important signing since Cantona, but it's true. United look like they may now be in a phase where they can challenge for a league title, and it's down to the impact the man's made, not just on the pitch, but that squad seems, mentality-wise, to have gone up a notch since he came in. And for a player who's got a startling lack of experience at the top table of European football, he seems to have lifted them players into thinking they're top players. Not just on the pitch, but mentally, I think Bruno Fernandez is a joke. And some stats here: 17 goals, 11 assists, 19 big chances created from attacking midfield. This is a joke. This is one of the best seasons we're going to see from attacking midfielders in the Premier League ever. And people are going to say, well, he ain't that good because he's on penalties. I think it's stupid. I think it's people who have a vendetta against United who don't like to see Bruno Fernandez or give credit to Bruno Fernandez, because he's one of the best in the league. And Will, I mean, I know you're probably not the archetypal Liverpool follower because obviously you're a Barnsley fan in Maine, but can you sort of see where that view comes from?
Well, regarding Fernandez, I think... Yeah, absolutely. From Liverpool's perspective, they don't want to see a United player doing well. It's simple as that. If you see some cocky United player playing well, that's the last thing you want. So I think that's probably the main reason, and it is, from a opposition fan's perspective, a player who is got that cocky side to him. Well, maybe not cocky, but you know what I mean, the attitude to him.
Yeah, the arrogance.
It obviously is going to wind up some opposition fans, whereas a player like KDB, as an opposition fan, you can't really have a massive go at him because all he does is play football. What you see is what you get with De Bruyne, and so I would say that's where it comes from. But no, like you say, it's okay. He takes the penalties, but it's still unbelievably impressive what he's doing, and it does slightly pain me to say it, but he is a brilliant player.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. Moving on then to the individual awards in the top flight. We'll sort of go from least important to most important, ending off with our player of the year. So starting off with our most improved lads. I know me and you have the same player for this one, Ed, so we might as well say them at the same time. That is Kalechi Ichianacho. How good has he been this season, Ed?
Let's break the season down into two. First half of the season, pretty dog shite. Second half of the season, incredible. 11 goals a season, got one of the best goals per minute ratios in the league. He's brilliant. And the minute that left foot of his gets important goals, and when Vardy's sort of fallen off the pace, he's been the one to lift Leicester over the line many a time. And top quality finishes, you know, I mean, they aren't just tap-ins. There's some really good quality sort of strikes there. And again, another player you wouldn't expect it. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I thought he's very bang average up until the second half of the season. But what I think we can all agree on is that he's one of the nicest guys in the league, one of the most humble guys in the league. Very honest in his post-match press conferences and interviews, and it's nice to see that sort of refreshing side where they're not all sort of stereotypical media-trained answers. And he, you know, for example, the FA Cup where, you know, he's like, well, I didn't want to stay out on the pitch because it's too cold and stuff like that. It's just nice to see that sort of refreshing honesty. And now, he had to be my most improved player.
Yeah, and it's all in the title, isn't it? Most improved. And last season he had a 0.25 minutes goals per 90 ratio, and this season he's doubled that and got a 0.5 minutes per 90 goal ratio. So it's incredible, the improvement. And more in focus the second half of the season, because Jamie Vardy, by his standards, has had a poor second half of the season, and Iheanacho's goals have kept Leicester not only in the race for the top four, but in an FA Cup final. And he has to get huge credit for that. Will, who's your most improved player?
So, my most improved player is, it could have also been a candidate for my unsung hero, and that's Pedro Nette at Wolves. I think in a Wolves team which, after last season's performance, has perhaps maybe underperformed this year, he has been a standout man, and I think you have to keep reminding yourself just how young he is. Every time I watch Wolves play, he is by far, in my opinion, the best player. He looks so impressive for his age. And I think, you know, last season he was in and around the squad. This year he's made himself, if anything, the star man of that Wolves team at such a young age. And I think in a world where we're getting filled with Foden, Mount, etc., in young talent, I think Pedro Neto has got to be, I'm not saying he's as good as Phil Foden, he's got to be in and around that conversation of very good young talent at the moment. And I think he's completely overlooked most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Massively. Wolves have had a pretty disappointing season this year, and in the absence of Raul Jimenez, he's been outstanding. And there's no surprises to why teams like Manchester United are looking at him and going, if we can't get Jadon Sancho, why not go with Pedro Neto? And he really has been outstanding. You mentioned your unsung hero that he could have got in there. Who is your unsung hero?
My unsung hero is Yves Bissouma from Brighton and Hove Albion. Very, very, very good midfielder at his job. You know, we spoke about earlier with Højbjerg, these midfielders whose job it is to break up play, give the ball to the attackers, and I think he's one of the best in the business at that. You know, only 24 years of age, he's still fairly young. And again, in a Brighton team who, it's been a weird season for Brighton, hasn't it? You know, some very good performances and just not the reflection of that in the table whatsoever. But he has been a very good player, and while he's not got a load of talk around him, there are some rumours of the likes of United looking at him, because why not? You know, he's probably not going to cost an absolute fortune, and yet he could more than do a job in that midfield.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think there's much more you can add to that. I completely echo what you're saying. Ed, unsung hero for you, mate.
Matheus Pereira at West Brom is the person that I've gone for. Now, for me, this lad should be a top 6 player next season. You look at his numbers, 9 goals, 5 assists in that West Brom side. He's excellent. He's stunning. And he's hands down, miles above any other player in that team. He's absolutely sensational. He was good in the Championship. I'd argue he's been even better in the Premier League, which is saying something. And now I think he's proven this season that he's a more than established player of this level. And I'm not taking a piss there where I say I think a top 6 club, okay, let me reword that. I think Spurs or Arsenal should be looking at Matheus Pereira. And, for example, if Ødegaard goes back to Real Madrid, which looks likely, and Arsenal need someone to fill that number 10 role if Smith Rowe is still sort of not putting a firm stamp on it, Matheus Pereira has got to be the man I would go and look at. He's sort of a quintessential Brazilian attacking midfielder, and he does the role so well, and he's got some really important goals at times, obviously in the longevity of the season. West Brom looks to be going down, but no, a quality player and an unsung hero.
Yeah, you mentioned you think he's good enough to move to one of the big 6. Who do you think, sort of in that West Brom side, other than Pereira, you spoke about that, do you think there's anyone who you can even compare to Pereira, or do you genuinely think he's carried them this season to, let's face it, a pretty poor Premiership finish, but that he's had to carry most of the goals and assists on his own back?
In what respect? I think anyone in that West Brom side.
Sort of in the sense, has he even had any help?
I think it's hard to argue. I mean, Yukosu, since he's coming in January, I've been impressed by him in sort of that on defensive mind role. He allowed Pereira to flourish a little bit more. Obviously, Karlan Grant, who was a player I thought he'd really do quite well in the Premier League, but he's been a bag of arse. When you got like Matt Phillips, Robert Snodgrass, Kamil Grosicki, all these players who you got out wide, let's face it, lads, they're not the best. So it is a bit of a sort of one-man show for the Baggies, and what a show it's been at times. I think the West Brom side, the only 2 players of note who I think why are you laughing so much?
I'm sorry. Bag of arse. That is.
You've never heard that phrase.
I have. I just didn't think that's the way you describe Karlan Grant's season. He's been a bag of arse.
It's honest though.
Only other good player in that West Brom team has probably been Sam Johnston. Would you not say?
Yeah, that's what I say.
He's had a good season.
They're the only 2 Premier League players in that squad, and Yukosu, obviously he's on loan.
Yeah.
No, I think he had to be my unsung hero. Everson was a very good shout though. There were a few others. I thought Jesse Lingard, could maybe make a shout for it. He nearly made him a shout for most improved, considering he was non-existent first half of the season.
True. But I mean, if he were at West Ham all season, then definitely. But like you say, a few good shouts.
Well, ironically, my unsung hero is being sang about by Eddie in Harry Maguire. So I'm gonna have to change that now, because he's defeated the object of the unsung hero award. So actually, I'm going to give mine to Marcus Alonso. Now, maybe he's not been the most consistent over the year, and we're not going to mention his driving record, but he's been absolutely sensational when called upon at times for Tuchel, and in big games as well. He scored the winner last night against Manchester City, and Chelsea look to be heading for another top 4 berth. They're in a Champions League final. They're in an FA Cup final, and for a player who was regarded as finished by many around a year ago, I think he's been very good for Chelsea this season. And he's like I said, he's an unsung hero in the sense that many people don't rate him.
I think.
But
Sorry,
sort of
just.
the left.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm just going to
No,
say,
it's
to
okay.
touch on that, you could put, or I would maybe put Cesar Azpilicueta in that same thing of,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
100%.
looked past by many, and yet he's actually been, you know, in the midst of Thiago Silva getting injured, he's been that experienced head at the back for Chelsea, which that defence has become one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it's probably a bit of an outside pick, but I really rate Marcos Alonso. Moving on then to our manager of the year gong. I'm going to start this one because I think there's a lot to be said about my pick, and you're probably going to grill me for it, lads. I'm going for the baby-faced assassin. I honestly think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's done an unbelievable job.
Right, I'll start the critiquing on this one, Will.
Yeah.
We'll do it as a pair. We'll go in.
Go
for it.
First of all, I want to say I think a lot of Ollie's slander is unfair. It's a sort Man United, the sort of archetypal club where they lose, it's Ollie's fault. They win, it's the players' fault, and that simply doesn't work out as a theory. However, do I feel Ollie deserves Manager of the Year? No, I don't, because you look at the league table, and City are, as we'll all agree, head and shoulders above everyone else. All right. When you actually look at the chasing pack, it's not great. So a second place finish here, it's a bit Mourinho-esque when he got a second place finish at Man United. It's an achievement, but it's not a wow achievement, if you know what I mean. I still struggle to understand him tactically. You know what I mean? For some reason,
this is if you just let me interject on that one. I think no, I'm not saying it's lazy from you, but I think it's lazy because the fact that Pep Guardiola.
I'm not saying it's lazy, but
I know you're not. I'm just saying Pep Guardiola has such a blueprint that he plays from the goalkeeper. He has inverted fullbacks. You know, Jurgen Klopp, he gegenpresses, and he has his fullbacks push high. With Solskjaer, I think it's a much more understated style in the sense that he relies on players rather than systems. And to quote Brian Clough, good players win your games, not formations. But United's 4-2-3-1 is very effective at breaking teams down.
If I should check there, it's a bit Sir Alex Ferguson-esque, you know.
Yeah.
Ferguson wasn't this master tactician. He was master pragmatist. He made a winning side out of the players he had at his disposal, and you can definitely see that influence in Ollie.
He has good coaches around him as well, Ed, and that's something that's understated just because of their lack of experience of Kieran McKenna and Michael Carrick paired then with the super experienced Mike Phelan. I think he's got a good coaching staff around him, but I think he's a good manager. And the reason why I've given him Manager of the Year, and I should probably explain this rather than just telling you lads to grill me, is second position's great. But when you consider it that they've done this without a pre-season, so those Tonkins they took earlier in the season were United's pre-season. Their players weren't fit, but it is his man management, and it's the fact that he's got Paul Pogba playing on the left wing. Who would have said play Paul Pogba on the left wing and you'll get the best out of him? Nobody, but he has. Mason Greenwood earlier this season, he looked like he was in a real spot of bother. You know, he had a lot of off the field issues, sadly. You know, his best friend took his own life. He's back in form. Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, it was a partnership that people said it shouldn't work, it can't work. He's made it work. I think there's so many players you can say that about at United. And there's managers, Pep Guardiola, David Moyes, who I think have decent shouts to be Manager of the Year. I can't justify giving it to Moyes before the season's over because West Ham could still finish 8th. And I can't justify giving it to Pep because whenever Pep Guardiola needs a player, he's given the player. And you can say United have spent a lot, but if you put Jadon Sancho in that Manchester United team, who knows where Solskjaer would have gotten this season? And Pep Guardiola needed a centre back, and he got given one.
I take an issue there with the spending idea. Now, not necessarily all those signings have been Solskjaer signings, but to paint this picture that he's been working with real touch. he's wrong. You look at
No,
Maguire.
I'm not
80
saying
million,
Tosh.
look
I'm
at
not
Fred,
saying
50
Tosh.
million.
I'm saying he's not worth. His squad depth is Nemanja Matic and Juan Mata. Pep
Yeah,
Guardiola's squad depth is Ferran Torres and
They're not
Ferran
bench,
Torres
like that.
and Rodri. Like, you can't compare the two. And if United win their game in hand, they're still only 7 points behind City.
But
And they were 30 points behind Liverpool last season.
I would have to sort of agree with Ed, and that's that. I don't know. I think he's not done an awful job, but we can't pretend like he's got mugs at his. You know, he has got a good team around him. You know, and I still think we haven't seen a manager who gets the best out of Paul Pogba. I think he's been better. Still don't think he's as good as he can be.
Yeah, but how do we know how good he can be? We've seen 5 years of Pogba now, and this is the best football he's produced.
Everyone compares him to Juventus days, and how long until someone realises, hang on, maybe he isn't everything we thought he was. Maybe me and Ariola just had us the whole time. I mean, that's the time.
And back-to-back top 4 finishes for the first time since Ferguson, and he's gotten to a European final.
I don't think me or Will are saying that he's a bad manager at all, or that he's, you know.
I'm not saying he's a world class. Yeah, I'm not saying he's a world class manager. It's just I don't think the Premier League's been that strong this season for managers. Last year you were looking at 2 really good managers who'd done unbelievable jobs in Jurgen Klopp, winning the league with that Liverpool team and making them unbelievable. And that squad that we've seen this season really shouldn't have been hitting the heights it hit. And Chris Wilder, who did a great job with Sheffield United. This season, I've been largely unimpressed by gaffers. And like I said, I considered David Moyes definitely for this. But I know that West Ham are probably going to collapse. But that's enough about Solskjaer, I think, because we could chat for half an hour about him. Who have you lads got as your manager of the year?
I'll go first, yeah.
Because you failed to mention who I've gone for, and I find it rather surprising. I've gone for Thomas Tuchel for Chelsea. Now, I know.
I mean, it's Premier League. I would have gone for him, but it's Premier League manager of the season.
I still think that is just justified because, okay, he's only been in half a season, but Chelsea under Frank Lampard were looking like they wouldn't get Champions League, wouldn't even get Europa League place. And he's changed that team around. The first thing he did was solidify the defence, and all great teams start from the back. And now he's getting a tune out of players like Werner and Havertz and the big name players who we thought were going to be really good this season and haven't been for whatever reason. He's really turned that club around, and I don't think he's getting enough credit for it. That being said, I saw some tweet today that was, I can't remember what it was, but it was absolutely ridiculous. He was like comparing him to sort of prime Ferguson, and he's like, come on lads, let's calm down a little bit. But you know, I think the impact he's had on that club, and like you said, it's a weak field for managers. I think he's manager of the year worthy. I know it's Premier League, but we've got to mention his other assets. You know, Champions League final, FA Cup final, getting there to the FA Cup final by beating this City side that's so good. That was perfect game management, and we see it time and time again, barring the West Brom game in the Premier League. You know, the turnaround was so short between an absolutely abject side of individuals under a, let's face it, inexperienced manager to a side that complements each other perfectly. And you talk about squad depth. Well, Chelsea have got, after City, the best in the league for squad depth, in my opinion. And genuinely, I think they'll be title contenders next season. You know, really looking forward to the Champions League final, because if anyone's going to out tactic Pep, Tuchel's shown it's going to be him. I saw a stat of the top 60s played and stuff. You know, unreal sort of performances and results.
Ollie out tactic Tuchel though. He did it in Paris. He did it in 2-1 in the Champions League. So Will's shaking his head. So
tacticians. I mean, we talked about one last thing from me. We talked about Ollie there and the pragmatism.
Yeah. In
Tuchel, we got a tactician, and in Guardiola, you got a tactician. But no, just for the sheer impact and turnaround from making Chelsea what looked to be a top 10 club into a top 4 club. I mean, you know, that's cannot go unnoticed for me.
Yeah. Well, we've got to ask you then now, who is your manager of the year?
Well, I was stuck between two. If you could have a unsung hero manager, it would have been Graham Potter. And I think...
Oh, no.
Here we go.
Stop this nonsense now.
The thing that stopped Graham
Right.
Potter getting anywhere in the conversation of manager of the year is based on Brighton's results, which is a fair enough point, hence why I haven't given it to him. But I think Graham Potter's... I would... Give me Ole or Graham Potter, I'm taking Graham Potter.
That's honestly, football Twitter has got in your mind. XG Twitter, they're in there. Will
course
you
it
need
has.
to get them out.
It hasn't.
Okay.
You can't.
Maybe
They've put in great performances against Man United, against Liverpool, against Tottenham. You can't do that without a good manager with the field of
They
players
got
he's
bad
got.
again. They lost 3-2 against United, and then they lost 3-1 against United at Old Trafford. Like, he's a good manager, but he's better than Solskjaer.
I
And
think
he's
on this, you've
sorry,
got to
yes.
it's all right. Sorry to interrupt, but on this, you've got to be results based. You know, is
Which
Potter
I am.
going to
I
be
want to
top
make it
6
clear.
manager?
He's not my manager of the year. I'm just
Oh
saying.
no, I get that. I
think
get that.
he's
Don't
an
worry.
unsung manager.
Yeah. Who is your manager of the
I
year?
think he's
then?
recognised though. I think he's
Mm.
recognised as, you know, one of the hottest prospect managers we have in English football right now. I just feel this season too much has been made of XG, and this is my problem with statistics at times. Is the reality is Brighton haven't been winning enough games, and you can say, oh well, if you put a decent striker in there, they would, but that's not how life works. So no, I think given a few seasons, we'll see him at a top 6 club. You know, if I was Spurs right now, I'd be looking at exploring the possibility of getting Graham Potter, because I think he's the sort of manager they need. And I've got a lot of respect for the guy and think he's a great manager. But this season at Brighton, a lot of style, very little substance.
Yeah. Who is your manager of the year then, Will?
Mine's Guardiola, and that's because I've always been, you know, last few seasons I've been typically pro Klopp over Guardiola, and that's just, you know, trying to remove my Liverpool bias. That is genuine. I just think he's a better manager. Still probably do,
Yeah.
but based off this season alone, City got off to, by their standards, not a great start, and it could have been very easy at that point to not take your foot off the gas, but there were people saying that Pep was overrated, all this, you know, there was talk about... Yeah, exactly. And, you know, particularly into the second half of the season, he's completely shut those haters down, in my opinion. Okay, yes, there's the obvious fact of he has got an unbelievable team at his hands, but you've still got to make it work. And I think we've seen a side, you know, that City side, it takes balls to say, I'm going to play without a striker, and it work. No, you know, not many managers would do that, play without a striker, when you've got Aguero, Gabriel Jesus on your bench. Not many people would do that. And so for that alone, that is shown as a different side to Pep, one where is, you know, is, I don't know how much influence he had on the decision. It is tactical, and it's worked. And so for that, I give him a lot of credit. And in the end, they've walked the league from, you know, a position at the start of the season which wasn't ideal for them. And I think we touched on it. Compared to recent years, it's been a poorer standard. It's still been a good standard, but not the 90-odd points we've been used to. But I think, for me, Guardiola and City have just been leaps and bounds ahead of the others.
Yeah.
Great points.
Yeah. I can't disagree with anything you said, Will. Seriously, it's my inherent United bias. But listen, it'd be boring, wouldn't it, if we didn't?
It would, yeah, absolutely.
With the odd opinion.
If I didn't drop a Fabinho in there, no one would be laughing.
Yeah. Young player of the year then, guys. This is the most stupid sort of cut-off point because the guy's 23, but I've given it to him because he falls into the category, and that's Reuben Diaz. Like I mentioned it at the top of the pod, he's just been unbelievable, and is the reason why City have done what they've done, because it's similar to the mentality that Bruno Fernandez brought to the United dressing room. On the pitch, you can see teams respect City more than they did. I remember Leicester turning up to the Etihad. I think they won 4-1. They just didn't respect City. They were up against, I think it was Eric Garcia and Laporte, and Vardy, Maddison, and Harvey Barnes just tore them apart. And now we're seeing teams, going on the counter attack against City and seeing Ruben Diaz and shitting it, and then going for the pass backwards rather than going more adventurous. It's little things like that which win you titles, and it is an outstanding centre half, and that's why he's my young player of the year. Ed, who is your YPOTY?
Yeah, I've gone for Ryan Brewster on this one, boys. We talk the real talisman strikers of the league. He's got to be up there. Every 20 million or whatever they paid for him has been a real bargain.
I still feel bad for Brewster. I still think
he's going to do a Solanke next season in the champ. He'll get a good amount of goals.
He will walk the championship.
He'll tear up the championship.
He hasn't been actually too terrible when you're watching United.
Sheffield United just wasn't really the move for him, I don't think.
It wasn't.
I mean,
Palace were after him, yeah. I think
Palace.
Imagine him and Eze would have been much more enjoyable to watch. But anyway, different.
Yeah, sorry, Ed. Who is your actual young player of the year?
My actual young player of the year is Mason Mount. Like I said, he's just grown on me every single time I've seen him play, and I've thought this kid's something special. He can do it all in that midfield, and still such a young age. Really, really exciting. I won't put him in that sort of Foden generational talent, but no.
This is as bad as the XG. Generational talent. Who said that term before 2019? Seriously, guys. No one ever watched Wayne Rooney and went, he's a generational talent, did they?
This is the influence of social media in our lives, though.
It is, yeah.
No, but I mean, I do know what you mean. I don't think Mason Mount will go on to possibly challenge for Ballon d'Ors, but I think Phil Foden will. That's sort of,
yeah.
But no, I think he's been absolutely sensational, and just does his job so well. Doesn't ever moan about it. You know what I mean? He's a proper utility midfielder, but so good at every single position he's deployed in. Whether it be more central, just box to box, or more going forward. And that's what I've gone for.
Yeah, good shout, brilliant shout. Will, who's your young player of the year?
My young player of the year is that Mr. Generational Talent, Mr. Phil Foden. The thing with Foden is every time I watch him, I'm impressed. And I'm not a great fan of City. I don't have anything against them, but I'm not a massive fan of them. And yet he still does impress me. I think the thing with Foden is, this leads back into the Guardiola thing, is a lot of people were like, why is he not playing Foden? Why is he not playing Foden? And I think we've seen why. He was letting him develop, and now he's a full-blown, unbelievable player. And the thing with Foden is, I think there was a game at West Ham earlier on in the season, and City were struggling up front. The likes of Sterling, couldn't find what they needed to get a goal. He came on, I think he scored one and assisted one, just changed the game. The style of play he brings is just completely different to anyone else. He can be direct, he can go out wide. I think he's an unbelievable player for how young he is. And we've even seen him in the Champions League doing bits, did bits in the game against Liverpool. Yeah, for how young he is, I think he's an outstanding talent.
Yeah, 100% is to use that terrible phrase, he is generational. And I'd like to think that Gareth Southgate will build the England side around him. He won't, will he?
No, not a chance.
And to be fair, I quite enjoyed that hypothetical conversation that Phil Foden may have with Gareth Southgate. Build a team around me, or I'm pissing off Tamaga with the boys from Stockport. I'd love to see it, but yeah, England's attacking options are ridiculous, and I think Phil Foden's probably the best of them, sort of behind the striker. On to the biggest gong then of the evening, and Premiership-wise, it's often a controversial one. Who picks up the Player of the Year award? Will, let's kick it off then. Who is your Player of the Year?
You already mentioned him. It's Mr. Reuben Diaz. He's been, in my opinion, the best player in the league, and I think defenders often get overlooked for these kind of awards. You know, it goes to the bloke who scored 300 goals and 500 assists. Ruben Diaz he's solved all of Man City's problems and has made them an unbelievable force, both in the Premier League and in Europe. He is absolutely amazing. He is a similar sort of level in the impact he's had to a Virgil van Dijk, who was put in that picture of best player of the year, so I think it's only fair he does. So yeah, I think we've spoken a lot about him, and that's why he's my player of the year.
Yeah, there's not much you can follow up on that, is there? He's been, in an orchestra. He's been a conductor of that City title charge, and what a player. Ed, who is your player of the year?
I've gone for Bruno Fernandez.
I'll just interject here. I went Bruno as well, so we might as well kill two birds with one stone. I went for Bruno. To use his slander name, Bruno Fernandez. What do you say about Bruno, Ed?
He's just integral to everything that Manchester United have got right this season. He came into the club at a time of turmoil, and on the pitch, he's turned them into something quite respectable, not a laughingstock like they've always sort of been in recent times. Everything about his game is excellent. Yes, he scores penalties, but I don't get why that's a negative thing, and that Bruno Fernandes slogan's been given to him. And I just think, I know Will says about the goals, assists, you hit the nail on the head there, and the likes of Diaz don't get overlooked, but 16 goals and 11 assists, 19 big chances created. These are really incredible numbers, and you can't sort of devalue them. And no, I mean, there is the argument against the big six. Does he go missing at times? And I think there might be.
I think that argument's got to be quashed. He gets most of the time he does get man marked, so that shows the respect that people have for him. But he orchestrates most games these days that he plays in, and because he's got such good numbers. This is the thing. A lot of the time when Bruno gets a goal or an assist, he doesn't have his best game. Most of the time when he doesn't get a goal or assist, it's because he's orchestrating all the playing. When he links up with United's forward line, I think it's a joy. Listen, anyone who says Bruno Fernandes isn't a beautiful footballer, just type into YouTube, Bruno Fernandes best goals and assists. It is a joy. It will make you feel something. And I think that's what the very best players do. They make you feel something, and that's why I sort of gave Diaz the baby player of the year, in the sense that he's been outstanding, but Bruno it's that next level, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Nice little Rory Jennings moment there as well.
Listen, you've got to do it for the sound bites. You've got to do it for the TikTok coming soon. Boys, listen. This has gone on for a long, long time, and if you are still here listening to this, shout out to you, because you are a stalwart of the pod. If you are still listening, by the way, drop us a comment, tell us your player of the year and your individual awards. We'll love to see that. We'll give it a like and a comment. Lads, is there anything else that you want to add on the top flight?
I think we've covered it all.
Not much. I think it's been one of the most uneventful seasons for a bit of time, which has been a shame, but seen some real quality, and there's still a lot of, there's still games to come, isn't there? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm sure there'll be some more twists and turns.
And make sure to wait for part 2, where we look at the actual best league in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Part 2 is coming very soon. It will be the Championship Team of the Year and individual gongs, which, as Will quite rightly points out, is the best league in the world when you're competing in it. I'm looking at you, Ed. Anyway, if like I said, if you listen to this point, we really do appreciate you listening. Drop us a comment, like I said, with your opinions. Please do drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe if you're on Apple. Follow on Spotify, and we'll catch you in the next podcast. As always, follow us on Twitter @FloodlightPod. Thank you for listening.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.